We're going to let our guests from St. John's select one of the envelopes. That will be their side during the debate, right? We've been saying a lot of people have it as debate the model of something like the O'Reilly factor. This is not that. Both teams have prepared arguments for both sides of the discussion. They'll choose their sides. Once their sides are chosen, we're going to give our guests the opportunity to choose whether they want to go first or second. They will rotate from bench to bench up to the podium, and they'll give a presentation that's about 5 minutes. It'll be timed from the side table, and you'll hear bangs on the table. After the first minute of their presentation, the opposing side can stand to ask questions of them. It is up to the speaker to choose whether or not they want to take that question. So if you see someone doing something like this, waving them to sit down, it's not because they're a total jerk. They just don't want to take that question at that time. It's up to the speaker to choose whether or not they want to take a question. You'll hear another bang. That means there's no more questions because the speaker's going to be wrapping up his or her speech. When that's done, it'll rotate down the benches from the other side. Okay? While all that's happening, you have our amazing Twitter wall, which is happening right now. Please, using the hashtag WhosLives, WHOSELIVES, participate in the debate as it's happening with at the Twitter wall. After the debate is over, we're very, very happy to have Ashley George, the president of Adelphi's chapter of the NAACP, who will give a response for a little while. And then all together, we're going to engage in a discussion about it may be about the debate, it may be about the issue, it may be about how amazing I look in this shirt and tie. Whatever it is that you want to talk about is the things that we'll talk about. We have a wireless mic here that we can pass around to the audience. If people want to come down close to the microphone, by all means. And that's how it's going to run. Does anybody have any questions or anything? Oh, yeah, there is one other thing. One of the things that's great about public debate is it's not asking for the audience to sit quietly. If you hear something you like, let them know you like it, right? Traditionally, debate people pound on something, right? Like a leg or a table or something like that. But you're allowed to applaud. You're allowed to be involved. We want that. We encourage that. And that being said, I think we'll do the introductions, then we'll get started, okay? All right? So I'm going to introduce the debate side for the Adelphi University Debate Society, and then Dr. Jamie Wright is going to introduce our guests from St. John's, who they were kind enough to come out last weekend to do a scrimmage on different topics with us, and they may be getting tired of seeing us, but thank you for coming out again. So I'm going to work down the table from inside to outside and introduce you to our speakers. Are you going 1, 2, 3? Right. So our first speaker is John Sklar. He's the president. He's the captain of the Adelphi Debate Society this year. A senior. That's right. That's good. Sitting next to John is Marley Medard. She is a sophomore, junior. She's junior. How many credits do you have? Right. We don't know. Okay. She's a junior with the Adelphi Debate Society. Yeah! What, you want me to use the mic? Okay.
Use the microphone.
Okay, I will use the mic. It's a very unaccustomed position for me. And sitting next to Marley is Gia Giambalvo. She's a senior with the Adelphi Debate Society. Bio major, health fields, art major, pre-law, all of that sort of stuff. Okay, so that's probably enough for me. Nobody wants to hear me anymore. I'm going to introduce Dr. Jamie Wright to introduce the St. John's side, and then we'll draw sides.
Okay, debating this evening for St. John's University, I'll start from the outside and go in, is Monty Montgomery, who is an aspiring ski instructor and Vincentian social justice advocate from Washington, D.C. In the middle is Michaela Torres, who is a Los Angeles-born vegetarian, and she aspires to start her own international nonprofit. And finally, closest to me on my left is Taylor Tate, who was born and raised in Texas, is working towards a career that helps people gain better access to social and financial mobility.
Next time I swear I'll do formal introductions with good words for the team. We're going to invite Ashley George to do the draw right now. So again, we're going to just give St. John's the opportunity to choose the envelopes. There's only 2 positions, so they're going to choose one, and that'll be the position for the debate. Okay. What'd you get?
All lives matter.
In this debate, St. John's will be debating inside All Lives Matter, and Adelphi University will be debating inside Black Lives Matter. One last round of applause. Wish everybody good luck, and thank you all for coming. Will you guys be going first or second?
Second.
Second. Okay, so we're going to keep going.
Thank you, guys. I want to start off today with a quote from Martin Luther King. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. I'm extremely proud to be up here debating this topic. I think it's very important. I'm extremely proud to represent Black Lives Matter. Now for the start of the debate. So there are 3 questions that must be answered if you're going to decide who wins this debate. The first one is, can black be representative of all oppressed lives? The second one is it ever legitimate for a non-black person to use all lives matter? And the third one is, what happens when Black Lives Matter achieves all of its success, that is, it achieves equality and gets rid of institutional racism against the black community? Those are the 3 questions to keep in mind. First, we think the most important thing about Black Lives Matter is that it is a platform for black people to express their opinions, beliefs, values about things that are happening in their community, things that they think are important. This is something that they have never had before. The black community has never had a platform for such expression before. We think it's extremely important. We think it's the #1 reason that Black Lives Matter, the hashtag, really came about, for people to express their opinions about the black community and about the things happening to the black community. That's the reason. That's why we think it's so important. That's why we think Black Lives Matter is necessary to stay. The hashtag is necessary to be the only one used. We think All Lives Matter, while it has maybe a good goal in mind and also ending institutional racism, we think it is. There's a couple of things that makes it unable to be used. The first one is that it's tainted. We think All Lives Matter, whatever its intention of the individual user, is now tainted. It's now seen as the anti-black hashtag, the anti-racism hashtag, the anti-Black Lives Matter hashtag. That's why we think it's problematic. We don't think it can ever be transformed into something positive. We think when people see All Lives Matter, people see anti-black rhetoric, and we think that's the problem. That's the sole problem with it. Okay, so why do we think that Black Lives Matter can be used for anyone talking about racism? We think that the term black is representative of all oppressed people. So we don't think that Native Americans cannot necessarily use Black Lives Matter, that they have to use All Lives Matter because Black Lives Matter doesn't represent it. We think it's representative of all oppression. I think black represents oppression, therefore Black Lives Matter, there's no need for All Lives Matter because Black Lives Matter represents all of that. We think that's the fundamental distinction that we have to make in this debate to declare Black Lives Matter the winner. All Lives Matter is not necessary. One, it's tainted. We think it's really problematic. It's really racist. We think it's only used, it's used in the presidential debates as like a Trumpian thing to say to pacify his white supporters. We think it's really problematic for that. And even if they're going to get up and tell you that they maybe can transform the use of it, we don't think that's possible. We think it's already tainted. It can never be transformed. It can never be used by anyone. We don't think it is a legitimate thing to say. Third, we think that while we do have the same goal in mind, the complete difference is that we are going to achieve that goal, and All Lives Matter can never achieve it. So what does All Lives Matter do to the slogan Black Lives Matter, to the Black Lives Matter movement? We think it completely drowns out the issue that Black Lives Matter is trying to progress into society. We think it completely goes against everything they stand for. So they're not saying Black Lives Matter only. We're saying that because there is a problem within our society, there is a problem that black people do not get the adequate representation that they need. And we think that is a real problem, and that cannot be drowned out by All Lives Matter. All lives do matter. That's not what Black Lives Matter movement is about. That's not what it tries to suppress. It suppresses the idea that we can talk about all lives matter and not talk about black people in that conversation. We think that's essential. So what happens when Black Lives Matter achieves its success? This isn't a unilateral movement. We think this is a multilateral movement of all oppressed people. So when Black Lives Matter achieves success, that means all oppressed people, Native Americans, within America, Native Americans, Muslim, women, we think all of those oppressions will now come to light and will all be achieved because black represents all oppression. It's not the color of the skin, it's actually what it represents in the totality of things. It represents a history of oppression. It represents the contemporary oppression that's going on now. So really keep in mind throughout this debate, is all lives matter necessary if Black Lives Matter represents all lives, represents the meaning of all lives matter? For that, we're very proud to stand for Black Lives Matter today. Thank you.
So I think that there's a number of things that I really want to address about my opponent's speech and then sort of get into some of our material. I think that so we heard a lot about this idea of tainted, and I don't really know what kind of rhetoric that is when you say that something's tainted and it can never be good again. The police's relationship with the public, due to a lot of the recent goings-on, has been tainted. But does that mean that we can never have another positive relationship with a police officer? In the Mormon religion, black people were viewed as inherently tainted, but does that mean all black people will forever be tainted? I don't think that we can stand here and support the idea that just because a movement has had some bad press, even the Black Lives Matter movement has had some bad press, doesn't mean that it is somehow inherently tainted. And that's something that I would really like to discuss a little bit more right now, which is this idea, alright, that just because something wasn't good doesn't mean it can't be salvaged. And then another thing that I would really like to address is the idea that Black Lives Matter somehow represents the voices of all minorities. I don't think that necessarily when you say, I don't think Black Lives Matter even necessarily represents the voices of all black people. When you generalize a group like that, when you put one group of people and make them monogamous and homogenous, and you make, it's extraordinarily damaging. And not only does that not necessarily perpetuate the needs of black people, but it also silences women, Hispanic people, Native American people, all these other groups that we heard about that are somehow supposed to fall under the purview of black people. Not only does that somehow say that, black people, first of all, we're going to sideline your issues once again to include all of these other people's issues in your issues. You don't get to have your own issues, these are not your issues, right? But how can you say that to these other minority groups? And so that's one of the things that we think is really important about the idea of all lives matter, is that all lives matter allows us to address, in a more inclusive movement, the needs of many, many different and oppressed minorities. And this is something, and not just minorities, but marginalized groups. And this is something that we think is really, really important, right? So the idea that maybe even police can be victims, right? We're talking about race a lot here, Black Lives Matter versus all lives matter, and people see this as an issue of race. And one of the things we want you is we want you to stand here and open your mind a little bit, maybe look at this as a bigger issue, right? So what is the root of this issue? When you see, a police officer attacking a poor black person, and you're maybe they're attacking this person because they're black, maybe they're attacking this person because they're poor, but I think that we need to look at this issue from a bigger perspective, right? So we get police to wear body cameras, so now they're not attacking black people in larger numbers than they're attacking white people. But have we fixed the way that they look at the police? Have we fixed the way that the police look at their relationship with people? Have we fixed the economic oppression of the people who are being attacked? Have we made their lives more valuable in any way by somehow policing the actions of the police? Or should we start at a deeper level? Should we start at a level that somehow addresses more the systemic issues that have caused this rotten and perverse system? And that's what we think All Lives Matter does. Yes.
Is it legitimate for a non-black person to ever use the hashtag Black Lives Matter?
I think that the issue that we're discussing here is not whether or not it's about a black person being legitimately using the hashtag Black Lives Matter, but whether Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter more properly addresses the issue. I think that that's not the issue that we're talking about right now. And I think that one of the things we've got to say is that Black Lives, look, what I'm trying to get at right now is that Black Lives Matter is a very exclusive hashtag. And in some ways that's good because it gives people a specific set and say, these are your experiences, and we validate those experiences. But it doesn't address the issue. The issue that we have here, and we see racism in here, right? So you have these people who are sitting at the top who are benefiting from the oppression of other people. They're benefiting from the oppression of Black people. They're benefiting from the oppression of Hispanic people. But they're also benefiting from the oppression of poor people. And this is something that we think is really, really important, right? Is that we have to look at the economic roots of this. When you say hashtag Black Lives Matter, you've addressed the issues of Black Lives Matter. But you haven't addressed the systemic problems that allow a system to be so perverse that it allows people or gives people license to target one oppressed group. So now you've addressed Black Lives Matter, but now you have to move on to oppress Hispanic Lives Matter, and now you have to move on to female lives matter, and now you have to move on to, non-binary lives matter, right? Like, you have to move through these movements, and what you're doing is you're going through a cycle instead of addressing the root issue. And we're saying that we want to look at all lives matter, not only to oppress all, to unite all oppressed and marginalized groups, to band together and use the support of their numbers to force the people who are oppressing them, and we're not saying that these people are the police, right? Like, we're saying that this is a much deeper issue. We want police to get better training. We want people to not be shot by the people who are supposed to be protecting them. And we want to look at the causes of these issues. And we're saying that this might even be more insidious than institutionalized racism. We're saying that this might be a flawed system built from the ground up to oppress people. My partners are going to get up here and talk about the idea of economic oppression. We're going to get up here and talk about the idea that police are maybe trained to protect property. That's so insidious. That might not even be about racism. Racism is institutionalized racism. The ability to have racism and sexism built into these systems rises from the ground up. And for all these reasons, we are very proud to oppose.
Hello, hi. Today we're representing Black Lives Matter, and before I go into my points, I would like to address some of the points that the fellow speaker had brought up. She said that just because ALM has been tainted, it can be repressed. It can be repurposed. All Lives Matter has been seeded by people to directly oppose the movement of Black Lives Matter. It has nothing to do to saying that all oppression matter. It was never about that. It was to directly say, shut up, we don't want to hear it. My opponent also brought up the question of Black Lives Matter in a way that does not represent all Black lives. To that, I would bring up the fact that Black Lives Matter is an organization that is not created from one type of person. It is not created from just heterosexual male. It is created with heterosexual female, heterosexual male, and any types of versions of Black people there are, but allowing her question to exist. We are asking if, in a way, Black Lives Matter does not represent Black lives. In a way, if we say that Black is too big of a generalization for Black lives, then how is it better to say all? How is all less of a generalization of everyone on this planet than saying Black lives? Yes. She also brought the point that Black Lives Matter does not directly speak on oppression. The Black Lives Matter organization speaks directly to the oppression of the people of the culture. Black Lives Matter represent people who are transgendered, who are queer, who are heterosexual, who are lesbian, who are straight, who are Christian, Muslim, and any types of variation you can imagine. In what way does that not directly say that we are many different types of people? We exist and our lives matter too, and we are here as well. And we should count as well. On to my point for saying today. say is that Black Lives Matter is an organization that brings about awareness. Its sole purpose is to bring about awareness for problems in our society. It is not to baby feed a revolution to people who cannot stomach the fact that maybe Black people should not be killed. Maybe Black people deserve life. Maybe Black people deserve liberty, happiness, and pursuit of happiness. That maybe Black people are here as well. Maybe Black people are part of this country, and maybe oppression should not be silent. Oppression should not just be speaking to one tiny voice. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is for the people. It is to bring about awareness for people. In any way, as John brought up, justice is justice. Justice for anyone is justice for us all. Allowing injustice to reside in any community, whether we are part of that community or we are not part of that community, that falls on us. It falls on our shoulder. And Black Lives Matter directly questions that mentality. Doesn't involve me, that it's not nothing of my business. And I think one of the main reasons for All Lives Matter is for those people who cannot bear the idea of it is not my responsibility, therefore all lives matter. And that is the truth. That is one of the teachings of All Lives Matter. And we would like our opponents to bring to answer to that point as well. And for this reason and many more, we'll probably support Black Lives Matter.
Here, here.
We agree. We hear this side talk about the idea that we as a society are oppressed, and we agree. Why do we think that? Well, we think that the issue that nobody's talking about today is what race really is. Because race is a mask. Race is a band-aid. What do we see race as? We see race as something that's easy to talk about. Why? Because it's a lot easier to talk about race, and it's a lot easier to talk about your skin color than it is to talk about the fact that there's 98% of us that are living in this world that are being oppressed by the 2% who are sitting at the top that nobody wants to talk about. And this is what we want to talk to you about today. Because we do agree, we think that there are issues in society that need to be addressed. But what we tell you is that the way that they're addressing these issues are never going to get to the systemic problems. It's never going to get to the root of what the true issue is. Why? Because we think that addressing race is essentially cutting off the branch of a tree that has become rotten to its core, but we think that it is never uprooting the tree. Because by all we're doing is cutting off this branch, is we're sitting here saying we solved this problem, and the next spring comes and we ask, why does that tree give us bad fruit? Well, we think the reason that the tree will continue to give us rotten fruit is because we've never uprooted the tree and talked about the issues that are at the core. And this is what we want to do today. So we tell you this, right? We tell you that Monty talks to you about racism. And when she talks to you about this idea of otherism. Because we really think it's easy for someone to get up here and say, we think that people who are oppressed by racism should not be oppressed, and everybody's going to clap their hands. Because why? Because race is sexy and race is persuasive. We think that race is the first thing that you see because it's obvious. So what does that mean? It means that the Koch brothers will sit at the top with their millions saying, go ahead, people, fight about race, fight about your skin color, but don't ever look at the issue as to the fact that we're sitting up here with billions and you guys are sitting down here squandering about issues that never affect me. Because what do we think that the issue is? We think that the issue is a system that none of us want to talk about because it's invisible. And we think that we see this in their speech because they get up here and talk to you about how once we solve racism, we're going to solve all of these other problems because we're speaking for transgenders and we're speaking for all other minorities or oppressed groups. And we think that this is infactual. We think that fine, but in some worlds we solve racism, but we think transgenders are still going to be getting systematically murdered in the streets because we never dealt with the issue or the system that is oppressing us in the first place. And this is what we want to talk about today. Here's why. We think that any movement
that otherizes is only exacerbating this flawed system, and I'll take you in a minute. But what does this mean? We think that by exacerbating the system, anybody who's not in the 2% is going to be oppressed. And everybody who is in the 98% is going to sit here and not realize that they're oppressed because they're so focused on the issues that are only inherent to themselves. I'm going to continue to talk about what this means, but before I do,
we're going to talk about it. You've been saying that for the past 3 minutes. You have 2 minutes left. Go ahead and talk about how you're going to solve all problems for everyone who is oppressed.
Okay, so here's the thing. He stand up here and ask me why I, as a Hispanic woman, cannot use the Black Lives Matter hashtag. But what he is doing is he's only exacerbating this issue. Why? Because he's saying, let's divide the races. Let's divide the races and say that you guys can never step up. You guys can never unite, even though there's billions more of you than there are the people that are pulling the strings of society at the top. He stands up here and says, let's talk about this, but he doesn't say how we're going to solve racism. He says Black Lives Matter, because yes, that's persuasive, but we think that it never addresses the issues as to why everybody who's not in the 98% is marginalized and disenfranchised and put to the bottom of the sector because nobody ever wants to talk about that. We think that this racial division and not why, regardless of the race, is still an issue that we're not talking about, because you can get up here and tell me that I can never understand what it's like to be a Black person, and I agree, I cannot. I can never understand what it's like to carry that burden, but I can understand what it's like to be in the 98% at the bottom of society, oppressed, because I'm not a billionaire. And we think that this is something that we never talk about. And we think that this is something we need to talk about, and that's what we do with the All Lives Matter hashtag. We don't think the All Lives Matter hashtag should be a response to Black Lives Matter. What we think essentially it should be, and what we think we can see it being, is a movement that says we as minorities, we as oppressed people, we as those who are not in the top 2% agree that there are problems in society and we are addressing it together.
Sure.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
So, essentially what we're telling you is this. We don't think that race should be used as a band-aid, and we don't think that race should be used as a mask, because we think that there are issues in society that are telling us, go ahead and fight about race. Well, there's bigger problems that need to be addressed. Go ahead and don't unite yourself, because we think that this is essentially what needs to happen. We think that minorities do have unique burdens. We think that there are unique burdens that are put on the backs of minorities, but we think that when you don't see that there are uniting factors through these minorities, we will never be able to address the problems to uproot the society as a whole.
Here, here.
By directly addressing something that my opponent just said. She's talking about race as the branch of the tree. I'm going to put it in better words. In fact, I'm going to quote someone and put it in even better words. Ta-Nehisi Coates, those of you who are here may or may not have read his book, Between the World and Me. In that book, in the first 20 pages, he says, race is the child of racism, not the father. I think this analogy is even better than a branch on the tree, and in fact, we think that directly relates to the core of our argument on the side of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, we'd like to repeat once again for the opposition, Black Lives Matter stands directly at the exact same point where All Lives Matter is suggesting they stand. We have the same goal on the side of Black Lives Matter. We want the unification of the oppressed, the unification of those institutionally marginalized to come together along with their white majority allies and create some kind of difference. This is what we are here to stand here and say. But the difference is happening on stage right now is that we are talking about how that's going to happen, and All Lives Matter is talking about how we're not doing that. They're not giving us any suggestions. They're not giving us anything that they can do. They have not once answered, how does All Lives Matter unify minorities? How does All Lives Matter create unification for people? On the contrary, by not talking about race, by not talking about identity, sexual identity, racial identity, ethnic identities, etc., by not talking about those things, by saying All Lives Matter, we are erasing the concerns of not only Black people, but of Latinas. We're erasing the concerns of the LGBT community. We're erasing the concerns of all of the oppressed, institutionally and otherwise, which is problematic to say the least. To move forward, regarding some of the points that the other people on my bench have made, in the late 80s, in New York City, when the AIDS crisis hit New York City, there was a radio host who had on a speaker talking about the AIDS crisis and how white gay men who were afflicted with AIDS were facing oppression all of a sudden, and it was this foreign concept, and it was absolutely outrageous, and we should call to action. And the radio host who had happened to be African American paused him and said, "How does it feel to be black?" This is a very an old example, and it is still happening today. To be black means to be oppressed. It doesn't mean you're African American. It's not African American Lives Movement, the African American Lives Matter. It is Black Lives Matter, and to be black is to be oppressed. This is a historic example that can come back today. This movement is based in African Americans. It started with Trayvon Martin, and it has carried through countless examples of African Americans. That is the most prevalent concern right now. That is what we're talking about. It is not the only concern, and All Lives Matter not only applies to people who are concerned about Trayvon, the people who are concerned about the institutional racism we're facing specifically from the police, but other institutional racism that exist, institutional marginalizations of groups that are not based in race. We hope to talk about all of those things by allowing black to mean oppressed, to give access to that word, to that phrase, to all people who feel oppressed, so that we can unite against this problem. Moving on to talk about something earlier in the debate, the word tainted that we use on our bench. The concern that we have with All Lives Matter is the mouths that these words have come out of. Yes, those words inherently don't mean anything, really, all and lives and matter. They don't have a lot of independent meaning, but when you put them together and the right person says it enough times, or the right people say it enough times and mean the thing that they mean, which is to directly oppose Black Lives Matter, it no longer can mean the unification of the oppressed. It no longer can mean it. We want to stand up here right now and tell you that All Lives Matter is too dirty. It's ruined. We can't use those words to mean what they want it to mean. Again, we seem to have the same goal, but our words will get us there. Black Lives Matter is a way to create that unification. All Lives Matter represents something different and can't be divorced from that meaning. Thank you. Black Lives Matter, as I've mentioned, can represent not only blacks, it can represent non-black races, it can represent other oppressed groups that are not racially based, and this is the point that we really want to drive home here, is that this can represent white allies. This can be something that people who are not in the oppressed groups can use and stand alongside people who are feeling oppressed, who are feeling these institutional marginalizations. Why not, instead of resurrecting something dead like All Lives Matter, very, very ruined like All Lives Matter, why not create something new? If we don't like Black Lives Matter for white allies, fine. Let's create something new. Why not move as quickly as social media moves and create a new hashtag, a new movement for allies to use if we're so uncomfortable with white people saying black? If that's really the problem, let's create a new hashtag that allows them to feel comfortable, to feel supported, to feel able to help. Right now, when a white person says Black Lives Matter, it can very easily be ironic. It can very easily be skewed. But white people saying All Lives Matter is racist. We have a problem with that. So let's give them something to say. Black Lives Ally. Hashtag Black Lives Ally. Everyone tweet it. Hashtag Black Lives Ally. There we go. We solved the problem. We don't have to talk about All Lives Matter ever again. Those three words never have to be combined. We've solved the problem. Social media has moved so quickly that All Lives Matter lost its meaning within like 10 seconds of it being said. By proposing an alternative, something that's actual action, we are suggesting a change for this movement. And for that, we thank you for your time.
The system, right? We want to fix the system, and we don't think that in fixing the system, the way that we get to fix the system, the way that we get change, is by saying that we only want to help a certain group of people. What has Black Lives Matter done? They highlight issues in the black community, and they highlight issues and as a black African American woman, these are the experiences that I'm dealing with, and these are the type of experiences that I would deal with in regards to the police and the law enforcement institution. But they never talk about any other different minority groups. We never hear that, right? And because we don't hear that, we're actually erasing the concerns of those different minority groups. Black Lives Matter, they don't address the communication barriers between the police and the people who reside in these different communities. They never talk about the fact that people don't actually understand about policing policies, or they never talk about the asymmetrical power relationship between the police and its citizens. They never address, Black Lives Matter never address the fact that the police and the police academy, they're trained to be warriors. They're not trained to actually deal with particular groups of people, right? So if I'm an Indian person, or anyone from even an immigrant group, or anyone in a different who speaks in a different language, they never talk about my particular experience in the fact that because I don't speak that particular language, and then I'm being addressed by these white men who are coming to me and who have like all these power, they never talk about like how my experiences, like the negative experiences that I'm having with the policemen, and we think that that's negative, we think that that's bad, and we think that because Black Lives Matter doesn't address these specific, unique experiences, because just like as an African American, you have a specific and a unique experiences when dealing with certain institutions, we think that those different minority groups will also have a different unique experience, and we think that All Lives Matter highlights that. Go ahead.
As my friend Tim pointed out, isn't it clear that All Lives Matter was created by the top 1% to silence people of color?
So, what did she give you today? She said that just because it's tainted doesn't mean anything. So, if All Lives Matter, I think that what we need to do with All Lives Matter is that what we need to do is we need to have, like, that Hispanic guy, that Asian guy, or woman, the transgender person. They need to be going up and talking about their different experiences. What do we see? And with, like, Black Lives Matter has gotten changed. We see that when they went out to Bernie Sanders, and, like, Bernie Sanders, and we see, like, this whole idea of, like, why are they going out and protesting and, like, and interrupting his speech. We saw that, like, that led to, like, the Democratic presidential candidates to talk about that, to talk about how do we get reform for Black African Americans in the law enforcement system. When we saw, like, they actually got changed. We actually are seeing certain things happen, but we're only seeing things happen for these African American people. We're not seeing any sort of change. We're not seeing anything being proposed about the other different types of experiences that people have. Go ahead.
Do you see a difference between All Lives Matter and the Confederate flag?
So exactly. So that's exactly what I'm saying. So that is this unique issue that is like specifically fixing like a Black issue. That is not something that is specifically like catered towards like the actual issue. That's what my partners have gone up and they've talked about. Was that the actual issue is like a systemic issue. So that's what I'm saying. So Black Lives Matter, they talk about, like I said, the presidential candidate. They've got the removal of the Confederate flag, right? They talk about the visceral experience of being Black. But what about the visceral experience of being like a Hispanic person, or like an Indian person, or like a transgender person, or any type of minority or religious minority group, or ethnic minority group, or different racial minority group? We never get those experiences, and because we never get those experiences, we don't think that when we get change, when we have legislation that is being proposed, because it's only for a specific group of people, it's not actually going to help. It's not actually going to help like everyone. Not actually going to. We think that a social movement is successful when it puts their issue on the front pages of the mainstream and it influences the political agenda. If your political agenda is only being influenced to help a particular group of people and it's not supposed to help everyone, we think that that's like inherently harmful. What do we see? We see that the Black Lives Matter has been successful, but we want to include everyone. We think that the social movement can only be successful if it becomes more inclusive.
Here.
The next thing in the program is for Ashley and George to give a little response, but I wanted to ask one more time for a round of applause. Let me introduce Ashley and George for some comments.
All right, everybody did an amazing job, by the way. I personally cannot speak that fast, so I'm going to take my time. This is what I have to say. I just wanted everyone to realize that the Black Lives Matter movement came about due to a consistent string of police brutality incidences that specifically happen in Black communities. Yes. One, social media has been a huge component in this overall movement. I don't want people to get confused with, hashtagging Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter is it. I mean, I feel like we get drowned out a lot of times by social media. It's important that we really look at what Black Lives Matter is saying or trying to convey to the community, I feel, and how far we can take that. Like, are we just hashtagging it and it ends there? What are we doing in our communities to push that movement forward? Even if we are rooting for All Lives Matter, what are we doing? What are we doing to take that movement and propel it into something? I kind of have issues with the All Lives Matter standpoint, because I feel like where will you even begin to start tackling an issue? You focus on so many different groups, and it's just like, this movement came about because of Black issues that were happening in the community, so you have to start somewhere. Yeah, I just challenge everybody to think about that. Like, what would you